Hey Ottawa, this is your Monday Market Snapshot for the 30th of October 2023. My name is Annalee Rice and I'm a realtor here in Ottawa, Ontario. Every week I bring the stats, the details of what's going on in the Ottawa real estate market. As we are only a couple days away from the end of October, I am going to include all of the charts and data and everything to give you a sneak peek of what the Ottawa real estate market looked like for all of October. Now, I will caveat that things can change in a couple days, and as the sales and such come through, the data will change slightly, so I will update it again next week, but it's a good sneak peek of what was happening in October. Okay, let's go. First off, let's look citywide, and we can see that the number of active listings across the city actually dropped for the first time in a few weeks. We're down by 11 for the overall through the city. Mostly it was in the detached, a little bit in the towns. For the sales this week actually did pick up. We were up by 20 compared to last week. And again, it was mostly in the detached in the towns that we saw changes. This chart here breaks down the inventory. We can see that the overall inventory, that's the black, is actually slightly up from last week, just slightly. But it was the active listings, the green line, is down a little bit. Now that's because not only the sales, but the conditionally sold properties did climb this week slightly. So it overall brought the active inventory down, but the overall up. When we look at the actual new listings, how did it break down? So there were 317 properties listed this week. You can see it was quite a big drop from last week when we were up at about 400. And it actually is the lowest number of new listings that we've seen, basically other than the long weekend dips that we have sort of throughout the summer since the spring. So since about probably April or March, it's the lowest number of new listings. So of these properties, we had 103 of the properties, or 32%, were relisted properties, and 214, or 68%, were new to the market this week. And as you can see, the red line there, the sales were up for the second week in a row, and a little bit of a jump there. So of the properties that sold this week, we had 15% of the homes sold with no conditions, and that brought the average, the 4-week average, down to 17. So we had a really low week 2 weeks ago as well, was at 14%, so this was 15. And of those properties, we had 6% of the sales that sold within 7 days. That was 9 properties, and of those, 2/3 of them sold without conditions. And we had 50% of the homes that sold this week had sold in 30 days or less. Okay, next we're going to zoom in just for the data for the different regions, and then I'll get on to the details for all the month-end stuff. So don't leave yet. Okay, first off, the central urban region, we see that there was a drop in the detached and towns, slight increase for condos for active listings. Sales were pretty flat, up slightly for detached and condos, down slightly for townhomes. For Canada and Stittsville, we had a drop for detached and town inventory, and sales were down slightly for detached, up for both condos and towns. In Barrhaven, we had a drop in active inventory for across property types, and the sales were up for detached and towns, slightly down for the condos. And in Orleans, we had a drop in detached active listings, slight increase for towns and condos, and sales were up quite significantly for detached homes, and down slightly for towns, up slightly for condos. As always, I've got the full data here in the table format for all the different types. And I think the one thing I noticed as I was updating these is that the cumulative days on market for all the different property types is definitely increasing. There was several of the different columns where I was adding like 4 or 5 days to the cumulative days on market. Okay, so this next section of the update this week is going to be all of the monthly data and the monthly stats and charts. I will not have the details on the Ottawa Real Estate Board stats at least probably until the end of this week, so it'll probably just be included in next weekend's or next Monday's weekly update. Okay, so first off, I'm going to compare the month-to-month average sale price in the different property types. We can see that from September to October, the average sale price for detached homes across the city was actually pretty flat. It was only $1,000 difference, so 0.1%. The semi-detached, which is a fairly volatile market, last month it had a bit of a drop, and this month it had a 2.4% increase. For freehold townhomes, this is the one that probably had the most drop. It's usually a very consistent number, so it did drop below that 600 mark at 595, 4.2% drop. For condos, we've split it into row townhomes. For that one, they had an 8% drop, but last month it was a 6 point something increase. So a little bit volatile there, but a drop. And then sort of the opposite happened with the condo apartments. We had an increase of 4%. Okay, so this is the last 10 years of average sale price by property type. We can see that the detached market very flat for the last month, but down from the spring peak of prices. The semi-detached, that's the blue line, up and down, very volatile, but has sort of steadied out a little bit below that 750 line. The row homes have been very steady throughout the spring and summer, and we do see that it did drop off this month with the lower prices. And then the condos, purple and green, they kind of zigzag back and forth, and condos are pretty volatile with price changes depending on what is selling. So we'll see how that trends out in the months to come. Okay, so one of the other things that I always share is the close price to the original list price ratio. So this sort of tells you how much below the asking price homes are selling. And we see that for both the detached and townhomes, that percentage did drop. Detached quite significantly, almost by about 1% in the last month. And then townhomes, a little bit of a drop down to 97.2. And oddly enough, it's not very often that the condo market is the closest to asking price, but for this month it climbed up just slightly. It's at 97.6. This next one is average days to sell. So these are the ones that actually have sold. So detached, surprisingly, stayed exactly the same. So the houses that are selling sold in the same about 29 days of time on the market. The townhome market actually dropped a little bit. So the ones that are coming on the market are selling a little quicker, so about 22 days. And condominiums did climb just a little bit up to 35 days. These next number of slides are all going to lead us into discussion on whether or not we're in a buyer's market, balanced market, or seller's market. So this is the same slide that I have at the beginning of my presentation. It talks about the inventory. And I share this just to show you what the inventory has been doing over the last month or two or several months. You see that the green line, the active properties on the market, has been steadily climbing basically all through the spring, summer, and through the fall. So the inventory has climbed. This next slide here, the black line, shows us the sales, and we see that the sales have been dropping since May. So the sales have been dropping, the inventory has been climbing. So those two factors are what leads us into the months of inventory, which is the next slide. I will comment on this one here. The October ones, again, they're not going to capture all of the October sales. We can see clearly that the October sales of 2023 were below every year for the last 10 years. And I don't expect that it's going to have climbed up even close to that purple. So that was the 22. However, it will be higher once we get all the stats, all the sales reported for October. So it will be higher, closer to that purple, but not at or above that purple line. Okay, so when we have the active inventory and the sales, that's what we figure out the months of inventory. So the months of inventory is if no more properties came on the market, how long would it take? How many months would it take to sell all of the actively listed properties at the same sales rate that we were at? So with sales being slower and inventory being much higher, that is why we're seeing across the board there the months of inventory climbing. Now again, these numbers will probably come down slightly when I get the full October stats, because the sales will be higher and the inventory will be dropped off just a little bit with cancellations and more sales. So right now, snapshot a few days from the end of October, it's quite shocking actually for the detached that we are well up into the 5.1 months of inventory for detached homes. Townhomes jumped as well. It went up to 3.3, and condominiums up to 3.5. So you can see the condos, that's not abnormal. Last winter, we also hit above that 3.5 mark. But for detached and townhomes, those are both higher than what we even saw last year. Okay, so this slide here shows us overall for the City of Ottawa boundaries where their months of inventory have been. Now, this is not breaking out to detached and towns and condos. This is all of the inventory and all of the sales across the city boundaries. So as you see from this, we haven't been in a seller's market, which is defined as 4 months or less of inventory. Sorry, we have been in a seller's market for the last 5 years. And so although the overall is climbing up, it's probably well above 3 there, climbing up towards the 4. We are still citywide looking like a seller's market. The balance market is defined as between 4 and 6 months of inventory, and the buyer's market is above 6 months. And it's been since about 2016 since we've seen a buyer's market in Ottawa. So this is citywide, and we could break it down into the different property types like I did on the last slide. We saw that the detached homes look like they're up in that balance market frame, but the citywide, we're still looking at generally a seller's market. Okay, so if you follow along on my weekly update, you'll recognize this slide from the last couple weeks. I was having it earlier on in the slides, but this is the sales to new listings and the ratio, which is the yellow line, between sales and new listings. So this is another metric that you can use to try and figure out whether or not you're in a buyer's, balanced, or seller's market. When the ratio of sales to new listings is up like 70 or 80%, sales are happening, and 70 or 80% of the properties that are listed are selling, then you are in a seller's market. And when the sales to new listings drops below the 50%, which is that dotted line, that's when you start getting into the more balanced and potentially a buyer's market. So although the trend line for that ratio is trending down, it is still generally above that 50% mark. And so this sort of confirms that we're still not fully into balanced or buyer's market. Okay, so hopefully that was an interesting update. Again, this is all end of October. We're a few days away from October. I will update these for next week. If you have any questions or if you'd like me to address anything for next week, which will fully encompass the month-end stats for October, please let me know. Give it a like, give a question on YouTube, and I hope you have a fantastic week and a fantastic Halloween.